Good evening. Tonight, we delve into the pressing issues that are shaping Zambia's economy and impacting everyday life. From the rising cost of fuel to surging inflation and the escalating exchange rate, we'll explore how these factors are driving up the cost of borrowing and putting pressure on household budgets. We'll also try to unpack the recent basic needs basket and the ever-increasing cost of essential food items, examining what this means for families across the country. Now, the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry serves as Zambia's principal government agency tasked with driving private sector development. It oversees the coordination of industrial, commercial and trade-related matters, working closely with public and private sector to implement policies aimed at advancing trade and industry. Tonight, we ask, has the UPND government demonstrated effective leadership in navigating the current economic hardships? My guest, the Minister of Trade, Commerce and Industry, Honorable Chipoka Mulenga, MP. Join me shortly right after this. Thank you so much for joining me tonight on Costa. You're watching us live on channel 271, that's on DSTV. It's channel 20 on GoTV. We're streaming live on our Facebook pages. It's Diamond TV Online as well as Diamond Media Zambia. On YouTube, we are on Diamond TV Zambia. My guest is the Minister of Commerce, Trade and Industry, Honorable Chipoka Mulenga, MP. Good evening and welcome to Costa.
Good evening, Mr. Mwasa. Thank you very much. And good evening to all the viewers from wherever you're joining us from. Much appreciated.
Minister, the elephant in the room is the high cost of living. For me to justify that, let me just quickly get into what some of the factors attributing the high cost of living are indicating. First of all, the basic needs basket, as always given by the JCTR, for a family of 5 in Lusaka, now standing at 10,393. Obviously, this is down from what it was in October, now in November. In October, it was 10,408. It's gone down slightly at 10,393, but still considered a bit high. Inflation, compared to previous years, we are told standing at 16.5%. This is the highest since November of 2021, which stood at 16.4. The monetary policy rate has been raised again by 50 basis points to 14%. And obviously this was on November 11th by the Bank of Zambia at the last meeting that was held. The cost of fuel, just yesterday, 30th of November, petrol is now up 33 kwacha 67 ngwe. Diesel is now fetching 32 kwacha 42 ngwe. That means obviously the cost of transport, the cost of doing business will go up. The exchange rate, the dollar now trading at 27 kwacha 18, and then the rand at 1 kwacha 15 ngwe. Overnight lending rates, Minister, as at November, you're talking at 30.5% on average. The cost of basic commodities, Minister, sugar, 56 kwacha for 2 kg, 300 kwacha, 5 liters cooking oil, 365, 25 kg bag of millimil. How do Zambians afford, Minister?
Thank you very much, Costa. You've raised real issues that are affecting everybody in our homes, wherever we are. And I just want to, from the onset, say this. It has been a very challenging year for everyone. We take ownership of the current situation because we are that servant leadership that is supposed to be there to stand with the people and see how we make it light and easy. But let's fully understand why are we here, where we are? Where are we coming from? Last year or the previous year, what was the projection of the growth of this economy? We're talking about growing our economy between 4 to 5, 6%, but we are declining the growth into about 1.3, 1.5%. What has happened to the other 4.5% of growth that we talk about? When you are making a projection of any spending, investment, and other aspects, you put all favorable and unfavorable conditions in place that are fully foreseeable, except that which you cannot control over. It's unfortunate that we've been hit with this worst drought in the last 40 years. And that's how come you see that there's a decline in the growth of our economy. But you may ask us a question that, look, the drought cannot be the only excuse that we should always be talking about, but it is indeed the major factor, negative factor, that has affected us. Why has it affected us in this negative way? Since independence, our entire dependence of power, or should I say energy supply, has been on one: hydro energy. Over 98%, almost 100%, has been on hydro energy. Because we as a people, let me not even talk about past governments or anything, we've never decided to invest in it. But there's a positive that we have drawn, even out of this challenge that we have. It's high time now we grab the bull by the horn and invested in alternative sources of energy, which unfortunately you will not see them give results overnight. It's a more reason why we've got coal, which is a phosphate type of coal. And now we are setting 300 megawatt in addition to what we already have. We've got solar, where you've seen even independent power producers like CEC and many others have come on board to provide. In the next 4 or 5 years, if we continue at this trajectory of investment into energy, we will equal the productivity or even surpass that we have in hydro. Should we have a drought in the future, we have to just to turn on to the other alternative sources of energy. But it brings us down to what you have highlighted: inflation, exchange rate, cost of other food products. When we have got a challenge like we have, we're talking about 80% of our productive areas hit by a drought. Which are these 80% of our productive areas? Central, Lusaka, and southern and eastern province. These are the major food baskets of this country, and they were heavily hit. Little production, about 20% or so, comes in from my village in Muchinga, in northern Copperbelt and Luapula province, and we had good rains. And we are very grateful that even in these regions, they produced enough, and that's what we are feeding on right now. So you definitely expect the law of supply and demand to kick in.
Maybe the follow-up then, Minister, would be, are you saying then tonight that you're largely blaming the drought on the high cost of living? One would argue and say, Minister, yes, we've declared a disaster. The drought has brought about a power crisis. It has brought about a food crisis, because this is directly impacting with agriculture. But for example, how do we explain the fact that we know our large export base comes from copper and the mines, and this administration has been boasting of recuperated FDI in the mines? We just saw last week in Solwezi, Kalengwa mines and others coming up. You've been boasting. Mopani is back, Vedanta is back at First Quantum, back at KCM rather. Why are we failing to manage the exchange rate? Why are we failing to manage fuel prices?
Yes.
Why are we failing to manage inflation if on one hand you're telling us we're back in business, we're back in the Champions League? What has the drought got to do with the cost of petrol? What has the drought got to do with the cost of borrowing?
Yes.
Why the MPR must be going up? What does drought have to do with it?
Thank you. Costa, you've asked a very good question, and I'll talk to you or respond to you on these questions on two folds. One, as minister responsible for industry, and secondly, as a private individual that had spent much of his life in the mining sector. Mining, actually. Mining, indeed, and we are committed and very visionary that by the year 2031, we should hit the mark of 3 million tons. But this is investment, Costa, that doesn't yield results overnight. The damage that was done in the mining sector has got ripple effects that takes generations or time that is quite lengthy to recover from it. When we are investing in this, we are projecting a period of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years to have not only stability, not only return on investment, but even growth that is seen even by those that will be coming after us. When we say we are going to get to a period of 3 million tons, we can't get 3 million tons with closed KCM, with closed Mopani, with Lumwana and Kansanshi that are about to exit. Then we need to sit around the table with them and get them back to productivity. And this is what we have done. But Mopani, KCM, Lumwana, Kansanshi are not good enough to give us the 3 million tons. What do we have to do? We now need to go to Mingomba mine. We now need to go to FQM and all these others that in Northwestern Province, in Central Province mines that we are getting back together. And right now we are at a point of reinvestment and investment. So a time will come now of productivity. Mining is not an industry where you get gains immediately. But the most gains that we get out of them is the increased generation of new jobs, the increased tax base that we are going to be collecting from this. But as for the kwacha, among other things, you spoke very well when you said the chief earner of our forex is copper. In the past, Costa, we've been producing copper almost to 1 million tons per year. What did we do? Because we were reckless and irresponsible as a people. We closed Mopani, we closed KCM, we threatened the departure of Lumwana and Kansanshi. Productivity dropped to its lowest of 500,000 metric tons. How do you attract forex when that which makes you earn forex is not available? No matter how much you can be a magician, you can never get a stable currency when what earns you, the forex, is not available.
Granted, Minister, that's why I'm asking. You've spoken about your visionary plans of having 3 million, metric tons of copper output in the next, 10 years. My question again is, if we are back into business, Pani is open, IRH is there, they've liquidated the Glencore issues, Vedanta is back at KCM, you're letting First Quantum stay, they're expanding with the nickel project, you've got Mingomba and all these. My question again then, why is the exchange rate unstable?
Exactly.
Why then is fuel high? Are you saying this is all attributed to the drought?
Okay, that's a good question. And if you could just listen to this in a little bit. The exchange rate, it's about forex. How do we earn forex if we are not selling?
So you admit we're not producing enough?
We are not producing enough. But we are in the process of to begin to produce enough. I'm not even ashamed to say we're not producing enough. And that's the more reason why now we are opening these mines. We are supporting all these industrial sectors so that we can start producing enough. And then automatically and naturally, you will see that our currency will start now competing favorably against the major trading currencies. Now, going back to the aspect you say, why is fuel so expensive? It's a question that I can answer you so easily. If our currency is not performing very well and we are buying fuel with a foreign currency, we have to change our weak currency into a stronger foreign currency. The cost will be high. So we still have to do our background work to strengthen it by exporting and earning. Just one point, Costa, sorry not to cut you short, my dear brother. Why we have to make sure that, why we have to really endure this cost of fuel, among other things, the actual price that we are getting because of the weak kwacha we have, you and I do not have control over the fuel that we are talking about. We import it. It's a more reason why at a certain point, those things that where we can have control ourselves, we should have control. Like the production of fertilizer right now. The last time I came on this program, Costa, you asked me, must be a year or so ago, about cost of fertilizer, which was fetching about almost 1,400 kwacha. Now we have got monopoly and control of the fertilizer because we're manufacturing it here. We've seen the reduction in the cost.
I'll be coming to the issues of fertilizer, but still on the fuel, you say there's absolutely no control. We know that the RBO announces these monthly reflective prices based on the exchange rate and the cost of crude on the international market. But surely there's something that government can do to control some of these issues. We know, Minister, currently that they are transportational challenges and bottlenecks. You yourself, a couple of days ago, did assure the country that you were speaking to your counterparts in Zimbabwe to resolve the transit fees that Zimbabwe had introduced, because we are aware that we are importing petrol as a finished product, and obviously through Tazama we'll talk a little later about diesel. Can you confirm that currently we're getting our fuel importation or trucks coming through the port of Beira from Mozambique, disrupted obviously with the civil strife there? Is this attributing to the increment now that we're seeing petrol at almost 34 kwacha per litre?
Before I even get to respond on the cost of petrol as a result of the transit points, I need to say something that is very critical. Why I'm saying this, I have seen social media pundits, among other online bloggers, saying we can't move our commodity in Zimbabwe because Zimbabwe has unilaterally imposed a fee on Zambian commodities. No. I've been in contact with my colleagues from Zimbabwe. I've been in touch even with the Zimbabwean embassy here in Zambia. And I speak to you as your public servant. And verily what I tell you is what it is. Zimbabwe, what they did is something that any other country, including myself and any other, would do to protect illicit dumping, or should I say dumping of any products in their country. Obviously, there are WTO issues that can be brought in based on what they did. That imposition of a fine is not to Zambia alone. There is the DRC, there is Malawi, there are others. They are all subjected to that. So I needed to make this clear. So now we are trying to engage our colleagues from Zimbabwe, because they are, maybe people may not understand what I said dumping. There are some unscrupulous dealers in the filler industry. They declare at the entry point of Zimbabwe to say this thing is going to Zambia or any other country. Yet it is not passing. They are dumping it there. It is not even in the system of Zimbabwe to find out what taxes they can collect, just like we may not be having it. But they even dump with uncertified fuels and others. So they wanted to make a control to say, let us see that we manage it. Have they declared the right stuff, and what is the point of exit, so that they are even made to pay those taxes? But we are having a conversation with them. Why? Because much of the fuel our fuel that passes through there are done by very responsible companies like Puma, Total, who can never engage into those illicit activities. So I can assure you with certainty that we are having conversations with them.
But Minister, you're still not nipping my question in the bud. I think what the viewers would like to understand is, what are you as a responsible government then doing within things in your control? We talk about Zimbabwe, we talk about Mozambique. All these are countries within a COMESA cluster, within a SADC cluster. You are now talking the Africa Commercial Free Trade, Continental Free Trade Area. We've been talking ways of easing, doing business. Should we surely heap everything on the fact that because we do not produce crude and oil, so as long as the exchange rate and the cost per barrel goes up, there's nothing surely, even if we're not giving subsidies, that we can do to cap the cost because
fuel.
34 kwacha
I'm coming, Costa.
Is too high.
Yes, I'm coming, Costa. I didn't even touch your question. I was only trying to give a background and clear this wrong perception that is on social media about the fine that Zimbabwe has imposed. Now, coming to the point where you said, is there anything we can do? And while Zimbabwe was our alternative route, with this fine, while we're trying to resolve it, we opted to using the Mozambique. But our colleagues were coming in from elections. And during the election process, there was a civil strife, among other things, where you see that at the port now, it is extremely congested. Not only fuel is affected. There's even fertilizer, there's even other goods and other things that are delaying to come into the country. So and that's why now we're having to engage with our colleagues, even at Walvis Bay, in Namibia, if we can dock there. So there are many options that we are trying to use. It's a challenge to be a landlocked country. Then we get all these things. But the alternative routes that we get to use, if they are longer, the cost of transit, the cost of logistics is something that we have to bear again. These are the things that we are going through. But now coming back to the aspect where you want to say, is there anything that we can do to make sure that we lower this cost? That's why as a country, we need to work extremely hard and be very productive in the copper industry, in the agricultural sector, and start exporting and strengthen our currency. When we strengthen our currency, we'll be able to buy these things at a lower cost, and the end product will be lower. We don't want to fictitiously put in fake dollars or fake subsidies for the interim, so that everybody will clap and allude, say, oh, the price is lower now. But yet we are hitting the treasury, which is the backbone of the economic growth of our country. So what we need to do, and we just have to do it, hard way. We need to increase our productivity and exports of our products. And in this, it's not only copper, which you may challenge me to say it will take 10 years, it will take 5 years for you to see the benefits. We have gone on a hard and robust path of industrialization in this country.
Before we come to industrialization, yes, I'll challenge you that it's not only copper, Minister. Afrobarometer, they recently released a report suggesting dissatisfaction with the European government over the rate of response towards, drought and economic repercussions. People are challenging you 3 years down the line now that you are failing to deliver on your campaign promises of fixing this economy. At one point, there was this argument, Minister, that you were boasting of a single-digit inflation, which has now gone back double-digit, saying that inflation was holding prices. But when you look at the price of commodities, they are now escalating.
Yeah.
Tell me, for example, again, it was only a few weeks ago, the president was in Northwestern relaunching Kasenseli gold mine. We were told that we're using part of this gold being bought by ZCCMIH, plowing into central bank as part of our reserves to strengthen what you're talking about, the exchange rate. But all these things that you talk about as a government don't correlate.
Okay.
You say one thing, but the practical aspects on the ground are biting.
Okay. I agree with you. And from the onset, I said we have gone through a challenging time. But I'll tell you something. You talked about Afrobarometer saying we have not lived up to our campaign promises. I need to learn from them on what specifics they're talking about. Because, look, when you talk about the economy, this is what I'm here for, and I told you, yes, there are challenges. But when we talk about these campaign promises that we are talking about, and we are saying, first, let me deal with the same response on the drought aspect. Costa, the effect of the drought in households could have been very much adverse if government never responded positively and adequately. What have we done? We need now, that is social growth, social response, economic response. Costa today, my brother, I'm coming from Chingola right now, and I was in Lulamba. I had a meeting with other colleagues after the church I had in Lulamba Catholic parish. What we have done to respond to the public, I suppose, Costa, to those times when I could just cue you and say, but Chipoka, this is it. We have subjected a huge amount of the treasury resource into our people, right into their homes, where we have got cash for work. People in Zambia were called to be, it is a mischievous response, labor on our people. Today I've seen it. They are willing to work, and they are getting paid right on time. Beyond that, others could not work, could not do anything. What have we done? There is maize that we've provided, and all the resources that we have made available to the public so that they are accessible. All these within the confines of the challenges that we have to make them surely available to the public. But what have we done again to go an extra mile to see that the Zambian public do not feel the negative impact of the drought? Go the industrialization path, go into the social sector, labor social sector, pay our people right on time when they are getting their salaries. Costa, you cannot downplay the influence of people having predictable income. It was not very long ago when you and I could see our civil servants not knowing when they will be paid. We pay on time so that the effect of drought is not felt. Money may come. Yes, it may not be as huge as we want it to be, but when it is coming on time, it is predictable. Then you can budget for it, and you know how to spend on it. Then we've got people that have contracts and supplied. What do we do to alleviate their pain of inflation and other things? Pay them on time so they can do their business and go on. Let's go to the copper belt, among other sectors. The mining sector, which you're talking about, Costa, it was a sorry sight. Even now, our contractor suppliers are yet to recover from the effects of bad management of the mining sector. We've paid almost everybody 100%, but they are yet to recover from that because they were owing banks, they lost property, they just got what they got and paid. That is a response in an emergency for people to have liquidity in their hands. Now, what you are talking about, Costa, is a certain area of micros, where you're talking about the cost of meal, where you're talking about the cost of sugar, where you're talking about the cost of cooking oil. But I need to clear one thing again, which the public must fully understand. There is a mischievous statement that has always been thrown to the public, saying that the cost of meal is costing at 300 kwacha because the government sold maize, because the government did not do this. Me, I'm a small-scale farmer. Why we saw the surge in price of milling meal is not because of anybody sold maize or anybody did anything. Research was done. Why were small-scale farmers pulling out of maize production? Why did large-scale farmers pull out of milling meal production? For your information, I should tell you, as latest as now, the largest production of maize we have in the country, 96%, is done by small-scale farmers. Only 4% by commercial farmers. And these commercial farmers, their 90% goes into stock feed. Why is it 4% only from commercial farmers? There was no value, return of investment in the maize, so they pulled out. What did we do to encourage them? We need to increase the cost of maize. The floor price from 180 to 280. This saw a large number of people now going back in the production of maize. It's natural. When the raw material, which is meant to produce maize, the price goes up, definitely, even the end product will go up.
Minister, before we come to the aspects of small businesses and industrialization, you argue over your response to the drought, cash for work, and you dispel these allegations that the cost of a bag of milling meal is not expensive because of a reckless government that truly did sell, maize in anticipation of the drought. But the question you're not answering is this. Despite all those interventions, you've also mentioned that civil servants are getting paid on time.
Right on time.
It's
with increments.
It's the cost of the commodities versus the income. In 2024, going into 2025, civil servants have only been given a 500 kwacha increment. Minister, that is not enough when you look at what I've read out.
Sure.
The 10,300, 34 kwacha per litre on petrol. It means bus fares will go up. It means the cost of production. Electricity tariffs in certain instances have been increased. Small businesses, the cost of capital, the president keeps on emphasizing on this, is still high. So even if I'm paid on time as a civil servant, is the money enough for me to buy bread at 25 kwacha? Is the money enough for me, Minister, to buy charcoal, to pay rent? That's the question. So you're boasting that with my little salary, as long as we pay you on time, it's okay, though the commodities are expensive.
I like the way you phrased it, and I will respond to it in an equal measure. You say only 500 we've given to civil servants. We need, maybe you would want us to give them a 5,000 or 10,000. We can only give what is available. The reason why you even see us going now to open mines, set up industries, open Mulungush textiles, start building batteries, do our own fertilizer plants, is because now we want to create a heavy or fat treasury. Then we can share more with everyone else. We can't share where there is nothing. The reason why we are even recruiting more civil servants, and while we are recruiting, we are even adding more, is because it is what is available in our treasury and resources. But a time will come when we Zambians begin to work after work like we are doing now, when we are going to have a heavy and fat treasury. The future is bright, Costa, because we are showing the public to say, we need to develop, we need to produce, we need to work. Then our treasury will be like this. In its thin status, we're able even to give that 500. By the way, Costa, go to the civil servants and ask them. Every year now, they are getting an increment. Don't forget, in the past 7-8 years, they stayed not only with a wage freeze, they also stayed with a recruitment freeze. And the question you must ask yourself is, when there was a wage freeze, and there was no drought, and the mines were functional, when there was a recruitment freeze, where was that money going? Which was not given because there was no increment. Where was that money going? Which was not given because there was no recruitment of civil servants. And here we are, within what we have, with all transparency, we are sharing it to them. Not only sharing and increasing, even with the 500, which we may frown upon, or say what statement we can.
It's not frowning upon it. The reality is, what the incomes are do not reflect the cost.
And I'm not running out from it.
Of the commodities.
But I should.
People are not making ends meet.
Listen to me. What is happening is not about a government, it's about the people of Zambia. And it is the more reason why we are saying that we only give and provide where there is and what is available. If it is not there, It's the more reason we say, guys, let's put our heads together, our hands together, and we will lead in this process of getting Zambia into a productive Zambia, a working Zambia, a selling Zambia, and a earning Zambia. Then our treasury will be heavy and will be providing. If in our absence or in our deficiency, in our lacking, we've got little and we can share that 500. What more when KCM starts producing more, Mopani starts producing more, Mulungush Textiles starts producing, United Capital Fertilizers function. We are going to have a heavy account and we'll share with everyone
I think the questions that the UPND is running away from is, you stood on a platform of telling us that when you come into power, things will be much better.
Yeah.
You showed us empty trolleys in 2021 in comparison with full trolleys after 2021. You told us you had calculations of how electricity will become cheaper, of how fuel will be. There were tables and calculations of how fuel would come down to 13 kwacha and so on. So again, this is why people are asking that you've really failed on these promises, because yes, you're doing only what is there as much as you can. But the opposite is that these prices continue to go up than you found them.
Okay. You are very right.
Unless you argue, Minister, that petrol is now cheaper than you found it.
Costa.
Unless you argue that millimil is cheaper than you found it. Unless you argue that electricity is cheaper than you found it.
Now let me answer you this question, especially on the last statement you've talked about, the last word of electricity. And I want to put this in perspective, not only in perspective, I want even every end user that we have watching us to go back on their drawing board or just to see the reality of this. There is an announcement that was made by Energy Regulation Board recently about the increase of energy. The increase of energy, Costa, there's been a certain statement that especially the opposition and the public there have bought into, say Zambian government at the UPND only gives incentives to the mining sector, which are owned by foreign nationals, at the expense of local SMEs or local people. The current increment of power, ZESCO, is very, very much homegrown, focused on Vana Bwalia, Vana Minyoi, Vana Avenzu, Vana Kamangu out there who has got a saloon, Fitumbua, and everyone else. If you look at today what we have done, the current increment of power that we did, home users, between 0 to 200 megawatts or kilowatts, there's been a reduction to about, you're talking about almost 15%. Between 200 to about 400% kilowatt, there's a reduction of about 9% to 3%. Where we have done now, the increment, if we talk about those are home users, and besides, me at my home, I don't have many connections that I have. I use between 1 to 250, and I'm benefiting that reduction. Probably other end users, it's the same thing. Now let's go to the commercial users that we can say, C1, these are in the SME areas. I come from Chuempala. In Chuempala and other areas, these have got barbers, welding, and other facilities. What we have done in the current electricity tariff, these we have faced them in a way where there is a reduction now for all of them. And the reduction that we are giving to them, check and see when you buy the units what you will get from what you are getting a month ago. And the consumption rate, it is giving you between 15 to 3% reduction. Where the increment and catch is now in the industrial productive areas where we've got the mining companies and other sectors. Power for the mining companies that you've always been talking about, where they used to buy must be between 10 to 11 cents per kilowatt. We've put it now at 18. Which are calling expensive power. And what are these doing who are in the high-cost productions like the mining and others? They are also cushioning and subsidizing the small area sectors that we are talking about.
But Minister...
So this Costa,
Minister,
I need to make a point that is important. Sorry not to cut you short.
Go ahead, Minister.
When we talk about producing power for the SMEs, for the home users, at a lower cost, it's in this current pronouncement. Then we give enough disposable income to be generated.
But Minister, this whole equation negates to zero at the end of the day, and I'll tell you why I'm saying that. The emergency electricity tariffs, according to ZESCO and ERB, were put in place, obviously to cushion the current situation that the equation was, what would you want? Cheaper power and no power,
Yeah.
or expensive power that we import.
Exactly.
So you're paying more basically to cushion the imports at a certain kilowatt bandwidth, the 0 to 200. But why I say it negates to zero, even if there's a reduction of 20%, if I consume 100 kilowatts per month, I'm still not getting power for a day or 2 days, or I'm getting power for 2 hours or 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And this power comes midnight to 04.
And
are people going to come to my saloon at 02? Are people going to come to my barber shop?
Okay.
So you see what I'm saying? It negates to zero?
I hear you.
20% reduction, but no power.
Okay. I hear your line of thought. And unfortunately, it is something that has been preconceived by many.
No, it's the reality, Minister.
I know. Listen, I've said your line of thought. I think you would be interested in
In your line of thought.
In your saying, what's the line of thought now that opposes that? I'll bring it to you. Whether we like it or not, there is no power for enough power. But when there is no enough power, it was expensive. So the less power that was available, let's reduce it for our people. It's painful. For people are willing to pay for expensive power if it's available 24/7. But not when you increase it, it's not available. So who have we increased power for? The mining sectors and others who are getting power, which they are getting at 10 to 12, they're now getting at 18 because they have it through and through. What do we do to Costa and Chipoka, who was not getting power? We reduced by 15%, 9%, 3%.
But the truth of the matter is, even if it's reduced, Chipoka does still not get that power. He gets 30 minutes
Costa.
in a day.
Listen, Costa, let's do this. This is a bottle of water. Yours is filled, mine is not filled. As long as I've got a bottle of water here, you charge me 10 kwacha. Is it fair? It's not fair. So what does the responsible government do? It's empty, but I have it in my hands. Instead of charging me 10 kwacha, I should charge you at 4 kwacha. It's not yet available. So it's nothing like it negates to zero. In the past, it was mandatory. Policy is done. It's not there, but we'll charge you at this cost. Now we say it's not there. Let's even reduce the cost. And that is what we have done. But now I need to say something, Costa. And I want to take a plea to all members of parliament. President Hakainde Hichilema has told every one of us, as members of parliament, get back to your people. Sit with this service providers, the community, and see how can you serve them. I'll tell you what we have done. I am member of parliament for Chingola constituency. We sat with ZESCO. In all these commercial areas, Chwempala Market, I need to invite you there. You've been there before, I know. We've got welders, we've got people with salons. Malemba Market and other places. What we did with negotiations, there's a Mr. Banda, who is ZESCO regional manager, and a Mr. Chinjenge. We sat with them to say, look, while you are providing power, but you are cutting from these people who are generating wealth, doing imbabula and other things, can we make sure that they've got power for their saloons, for their barber shops, so they work from 06 to 18 hours. It's better I've got power here at the workplace than I have power at a home where I just sit to listen to news. And that we've discussed it. Implementation started, but because of vandalism and other things, we see power intermittently coming and going. So it is a responsibility and ownership of prudent leadership. The president sent me to go to my people, and I've gone and to do that. If every member of parliament, every councillor can take ownership in their respective areas, because government has made a policy direction, let's make sure that these SMEs, where they're operating, they have got something for ends meet. It will keep them moving.
Earlier on, you said you have done tremendously well with the issue of the cash for work and letting people access this money on time. You are creating jobs through recruitment in the civil service. One would argue, Minister, that these, especially the cash for work, are temporal response measures to a crisis in the drought. Yeah. From you as Minister of Commerce, I think what we need to hear from you is the pulse of what you're doing for the private sector to ensure that your administration provides a conducive business environment for growth of the private sector, flourishing enough that the private sector can have cheap and affordable capital, and provide jobs. You and I on this platform have argued on this. I just read for you that the MPR was raised by 50 basis points to 14%. This means that private sector cannot borrow in this country. The average lending rate is 30%. as opposed to our friends. You remember this argument right on this platform, that the Chinese, the Indians, and others are coming with cheap capital, less than 5%. What have you done for the local private sector?
That is a good one, Costa, you have said.
Minister.
The question, and we should learn to draw lessons. Why are Chinese, why are Indians and other nationals coming into Zambia with cheap capital? They invested very well in the growth of their economies, strengthened them so much, and have the ability to now empower their citizens. Did we do that as a country? We didn't do that. But we have to do it now. But how do we get now to strengthen our private sector, to have an equal share of that cake that Zambia has, as opposed to letting it go to foreign nationals? Presidential pronouncement has been very clear. And I'm proud, and I can even cite examples here, where we say partnerships and joint ventures are key in how we do business in this country. You and I, Costa, we have our timber, we have our mokula, we have our copper, we have our manganese and lithium. We shouldn't just give them out like that. We need to go into partnerships and joint ventures. It is the more reason why the president withdrew all licenses of timber in his first statement as president from foreign nationals and gave them to the Zambians. What do we do now when we go to these Chinese, to these Americans, to these Canadians, to these Indians, when they want our timber? You don't need to put in money there because you don't have it. But you have a timber license, they want your timber. Go into a JV with them. They bring the money, they bring the technology, you bring your timber, you start have eco share. Don't sell it. What have we done with the 40 tenements in the mining sector that Kavuso is managing? We have said these 40 tenements, they are of high value resource. Let's get the Israelis fly their planes all over Zambia and do a mapping of the resource, so that when we've got the resource, these are owned by the Zambians now. When Zambians want to mine, but Zambians do not have the money, they do not have the technology, but they have the skill.
Minister, Zambians do not have the money because the system has not made it easy for Zambians to borrow.
This is where I'm coming.
The last time you were here, and I will tell you again, and I speak again away from a journalist, from a business perspective, because I'm running a business. Minister, you still, unless you tell me, I'll ask you this very directly, is borrowing in Zambia cheap? Because you're saying joint ventures. Why are you not speaking to commercial banks? The ABSAs in here, the FNBs, the Stanbic, the Standard Chartered, to focus on growing your constituency as Commerce Minister as small businesses. We have a power crisis, Minister. You're asking us to diversify. I still put it to you again. You were here on my program. I told you, despite removing duty on solar products, the solar products still remain unaffordable, Minister. So for a private business player in Zambia, you've got expensive capital, you've got high taxes, actually rigorous tax systems. There's the EGP, there's NAPSA, there's NEMA, there's workers' comp. The whole system is not designed to make you thrive, Minister.
You ask a question and you bring in a lot of issues which I would want to clearly explain. But now I'll answer you in this way, where you say, why am I not bringing the private sector to strengthen performance to strengthen their performance in our economy? And you say, I need to talk to commercial banks. Commercial banks conversations have always been there. But these commercial banks, they work based on the facilities that you have as a country. How are you growing your GDP? What are the factors of production that are fully functional in your country? These are issues that we are talking about. While we are trying to create wealth for ourselves, in the absence of a fat treasury, what do? We need to be ingenious and smart. Those who come with money, in the past, Costa, they would come with money and wholly own their companies. When I was appointed as Minister of Commerce, Trade and Industry, the Trade and Investment Bill at Zambia Development Agency never provided any incentive for you as Costa Mwansa. It only provided incentives for foreign nationals. That's why you saw that when foreign nationals come, they only do business alone, because incentives are for them. You have got economic zones. They only go and set up in economic zones alone. No Zambians could set up there. We revised that. Now you and I can go and set up there. How do we get access to the money that they have? This is my water. They should come with their money and we partner. I will not put money there. I will put my water there. They will put their money. From there, Costa, if we are smart enough, there is now share of equity. there is share of resource, there is share of skill, there is share of revenue, and we start building our economy. This path that we are talking about, the Chinese and others, China never had the money they had. What did they start doing? They opened up their country to investment to America, England, and the rest of their world. Tesla set up there, Apple set up there, but there was a condition. When you set up there, you work with us. And this is a model that we have taken. Not entirely a Chinese model, because we've got different cultures, but this is a model that we strongly believe it is good enough for us. I know you are anxious to see us set up policies that are going to make every Zambian rich like the Chinese and the Americans. There are fundamentals we need to do. And productivity is what is critical. We need to open up investment. We need to open up areas of production. And this is exactly what we are doing. And those areas of production, when they are open, Zambians must participate. In Mopani, where we have opened up, let's say we brought up the Bazungus coming on board. Costa, listen to this point.
But Minister, I hear you very clearly.
Yeah?
Before we even get to the step of making Zambians millionaires, earlier on you spoke about the fact that you're dismantling debt and paying on time. I disagree with you, because it is not happening. That let's just pick it from the budget. In 2024 and in 2025, the amounts of money allocated towards dismantling local debt, a very small drop in the ocean as compared to the entire debt burden. I disagree that the people being owed are being paid on time. And why do I disagree? Because again, when you go to these commercial banks, you borrow at a high cost, and then you're paid years later. The banks are foreclosing on you. And then it's also the system that you're not addressing, Minister. This is within your control. How do you expect a small business to thrive before they even invoice? You're being asked for a tax clearance certificate. Before you invoice, there's late payment. You're being asked for NAPSA compliance. It's the system. You're being asked to pay all these monies towards EGP and so on. So the Zambians are removed out of even bidding.
Okay. I will not argue with you, but I would want to learn from you when you say we are not paying on time, and we are still owing, and we brought in a small budget allocation to debt dismantling. Yes, the allocation to debt dismantling may not be as hefty as you expect it to be, because we have to work within the resources we have while we generate more to overcome all these things. But I want to tell you something for certainty, and let's not downplay it. Building a country should not only be done on a macro basis, it should also be done on a micro basis. I want to take you back into our homes. Costa, in all fairness, today, which civil servant have you had since 2021 that they do not have their salaries on a timeless basis? Whom have you heard today that they are doing business with government? They have gone 2 years, 3 years without being paid.
So many.
Okay, yes, but now I'll tell you now.
So many.
Exactly. And that's where brings us now a point where we talk about clearance certificates and others. We can't beat about the bush on this one. There is a serious tax avoidance scourge in our country. Zambia Revenue Authority, and I've been having conversations with them, where now they want to clamp down on everybody to pay right on time. It's a more reason why they are talking about the EGP.
But Minister, you're trying to draw water from a stone, or rather blood from a stone. I haven't been paid. How do I become compliant?
Now listen to this. These are
real issues, Minister.
I agree.
These are real issues.
Costa, listen to me. You are talking about a scenario that needs to be corrected. In an event that, like I'm coming from the Copper Belt, I had a meeting yesterday with the Chamber of Commerce for Chingola, where they're saying the mine has not paid us on time, but NAPSA is running on us. Can you, as government, run in and say, we have invoiced quite right, but can the mines pay us?
So you do agree that this is happening?
Listen to me, Costa. When you say there's a lap, they have not paid them, then one thing you must understand is all things have got systems. When I invoice today, on the 10th of this day, it expects me to remit a certain remittance. But in an event that the private party or government that I did business with, they've not paid me, there is no harm in you raising alarm. And this is exactly what ZRA did now when they were garnishing accounts, when they were withholding clearance certificates.
Which they continue to do.
Listen.
Which they continue to do.
It has to be done for defaulters, but it has to be done in a decent manner where exceptional cases must be resolved.
So here's my question then, Minister. As Minister in charge of Commerce, what do you tell your constituent, not in Chiwempala, but your business person who believes in you as Minister? How do they grow? How do they do business?
So now let me tell you this. And I want to give you a clear-cut example, because I had a meeting with Mr. Msonda just yesterday. This is the Chamber of Commerce chairperson. It is not right for Zambia Revenue Authority to garnish accounts when people have not been paid by their suppliers. Because when we garnish an account for somebody who has not been paid, then we've killed the chicken that is giving us the eggs. It's a more reason why ZRA should, in a very realistic manner, implement that time to pay agreements. I'll give you an example of the Copper Belt of Central Province, where companies had not been functioning. People had done jobs with the mines in excess of $10 million, but the mines were not paying them. And ZRA knows that Costa has got a job there. But they do a job, let's say, maybe with Mulonga Water. Mulonga pays them 10 kwacha, and he pays 10,000 kwacha, and he pays taxes on that. They go and garnish the entire 10,000 because of the money that is owed in the mining sector. It is not realistic and
Minister,
reasonable.
would it be correct for me then to say
Costa,
tonight to you
I need to say
that for the private sector, there's nothing entirely that this new Dawn administration and you as Ministry of Commerce doing to incentivize the private sector?
That's where you are very wrong.
I'm asking you because in the midst of a drought, which you are saying, no, look, Zambians, forgive us, because of this drought, we've had to scale down from 4 to 6% GDP to below 2% because of this, crisis. Because of the drought, we've had to bring in cash for work. Because of the drought, that's why we can give 500 kwacha only for the civil servant. Because of the drought, we are reducing electricity tariffs between 0 and 100 kilowatts by 20%. What are you doing for the private sector?
Exactly.
There's nothing that we've heard. For the private sector, even amidst a drought, ZRA still needs to meet its target. You need to be compliant. NAPSA still needs to meet its target. Whether you make money or not, whether you have no power to produce as private sector, we are still going to clamp on you as UPND. You need to pay the tax.
Okay, now I need you to understand why NAPSA goes to the private sector. The money for NAPSA is not for government. It is for the people they use. A drought is there, but you are working. Costa, you've got staff here. You need to pay NAPSA. NAPSA is not coming to Chipoka. It is something that you are keeping for your staff that you have. Government will be responsible because there is a drought. Costa, you work, and by the way, even when you work in the midst of a drought, you make a profit. Not as much as you are supposed to make, but you should be responsible to take care of the people you have. So I should remind you as a government, you need to pay for the people that you are working for. And even your staff must be happy to see that government is asking my employer to pay for NAPSA because it is good for them.
So is it justifiable to lump penalties on a limping private sector?
Listen,
is it justifiable to lump penalties on a limping private sector?
I'll answer it in this very categorical way because I need to make this clear statement understood. If you are doing a business and you're making a profit out of it, because by the way, you should even understand, in this government, even during this drought crisis, not even great, even before, when you declare that you're not making profits, nobody will come and take taxes because you've declared. That's why they said, do your returns on an annual basis. Nobody comes to you. We only demand only these things when there is a profit. But for NAPSA, you have to do it. You claim that we are getting too much NIMA and everybody. NIMA, who is it good for? Is it for Chipoka? Is it for Akainde? Is it for you, Costa? No. It's for the people that are working for you. When they get hurt, what is their fallback plan? It is that. So these are things that people should embrace and love. But where it is wrong, Costa, it is where we come to garnish your accounts when you've not been paid. If anything, we've changed our strategy. Our focus is to make sure that if you do business with any industry, they don't pay you. We push them to pay you. But your account can be garnished if you get the money and you don't do your tax obligations and requirements. Now, what is so good about these taxes? What is so good about these obligations? It is these obligations, Costa, that you and I are using to support free education, that you and I are using to pay the pensioners on time. Don't forget, my dear brother, in this country, pensioners could go from as far back as 1996 without pension. We are clearing that. It is from these taxes, my dear brother, where you and I are paying for bursaries and education at universities and other places. For the private sector. So now listen.
I'll ask it to you very simple.
Ask me.
Speak to the business out there, the private sector. What have you done for them?
And this is
you're talking about free education. You're talking about paying pensioners.
Let me say it now.
Let's speak to a person running a business with 100 employees employees.
Okay.
They are facing a power crisis. They can't produce. ZRA is on them. They need to be compliant.
Yeah.
Yes, they need to pay NAPSA. We're not arguing. They have employees. They need to pay these amounts. They need to pay their tax. But you agree yourself that amidst the drought, the business environment has shrunk.
It is.
So what are you as Ministry of Commerce doing to incentivize businesses?
Exactly.
When the cost of borrowing is high.
The first thing we did is to provide an amnesty for the private sector. People were owing so much, NAPS and these other things. We provided a full-year amnesty for the private sector, for them to breathe, to have a year where government forgoes all the debts that are owed for people like yourselves, for people like myself who is working for someone. That is the private sector that we have at hand. Number two, while the private sector is struggling, this is exactly what I said. I don't know how you missed it. ZRA, do not garnish accounts for people at Mopani, KCM and others, because when Mopani was not functioning, they were not paying contractors and suppliers, but you've gotten all their money. Can you go into a time to pay agreement so that they can grow and breathe? These are things that we are doing. Number two, what have we done now? Under the, not under CEC, there's a platform that under the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises, sorry, I may forget the actual name, where now we're trying to empower just deliberately local enterprises have access to resources. In fact, let me not even go to Ministry of Agriculture, Small and Medium. Let me come back to my own. Under Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry, there's what we are calling Zambia Agriculture Trade Project, ZATIP. From there, and let me even announce it right here on TV, I want the private sector, most importantly, small and medium enterprises who are in production and want to go into manufacturing. We've got loans, actually grants that we've been given from the World Bank, about it's a grant, $170 million. And we are going to do it all across the country, supporting the private sector to move only from productivity or extraction into value chains that are production and value additions. So this is what we are doing. And the other thing that we are doing for the private sector, in the absence of capital that we are talking about, let's do partnerships and joint ventures. We are yet to finish one thing, which is very close, and I pray that we finish it before the end of next month. Look at what has been happening in the mining sector, Costa. Everybody that has been doing contracts there are foreign nationals at the expense of you and I. But now the mines are back. Even them from their different countries are back. We want them. If you set up here, you set up with a Zambian partner. That will grow, Costa. That will grow the people of Zambia.
Finally, Minister, as we conclude, you earlier on touched about the fact that we are in a situation where we are not producing so much, especially in the mining sector, so our balance of payments vis-a-vis the exchange rate is not firm. But amidst all these challenges, the drought, and you've been mentioning to me tonight that we can only do so little with the little that we have in the resource.
Well, we build more.
So we have little.
Yeah.
But even within this little, there's a lot of leakage. One, your partners, the American ambassador, last week, after some IMF consultations, releases a very, scathing, a revelation. He says about $5.6 to $5.7 billion is being lost in terms of, taxation in Zambia within, the mining sector. Amidst the drought, amidst the little, you have the Auditor's General Report highlighting procurement of 156 ambulances where $13 million was spent, only 11 ambulances delivered. Is it wrong then when critics accuse you that where the PF used to steal pocket change, you now in the UPND are stealing on a grand scale, bankrupting this country, Minister Chipoka? Amidst the little, but there are all these leakages.
I want us to be very realistic, especially on the ambulance case. Yes, we've spent that much. And the supplier, and we are not hiding it. We are not a government that a private sector first should find it and they bring it out. We do it ourselves through parliament or through government gazettes and other things. We have given a contractor, and that's where we Zambians now should be responsible as contractors. We gave a contract. Out of the match that we did, he brought a little. And that's why we're querying them. Can you supply more? Who has stolen? It is clear. We've given a contract. He should supply. And we government has come out clearly. We say we gave a contract to this person. And the question that you should ask yourselves is, at what price did we contract? Let's compare in the past. In the past, there was a $270,000 worth of ambulance. When the Swedish government, must be the Swedish or the Norwegians, who even came to embarrass us and donated ambulances of eco standard at $50,000. We are the price is right. So don't misconstrue or don't misunderstand or misinterpret a delayed delivery by a contractor, Zambian contractor, whom you are talking about us empowering local contractors, the private. So this is what we are doing. The ownership and responsibility must be now us, the locals, to supply on time. Those ambulances, government has got no part to say we've inflated this, it's a Zambia that we've given, we should just now deliver on time. So that is not stealing from any part of government agency. We are empowering our people who should be responsible and deliver more. Now, another thing that you've spoken about, to say there's loss of taxes and everything in the mining sector, since time immemorial, and I agree, governments have been losing revenue through illicit movement of finances and undeclared things, and that's why you see ZRA now being aggressive in this aspect. They need your support. When there is illicit movement, people declare 5 kwacha. When they made 100 kwacha, that's why we say now, can you do all the transaction electronically? So when you transact, Dingani Banda will be able to see where he's sitting. So even when you declare, he says, but I saw on the EGP, you transacted 50 kwacha. Why are you declaring 1 kwacha to me? Let us just pay the right taxes. This is how we want to do it. Then all those queries you have of illicity, taxes, loss, and everything will come to an end. So when you see ZRA coming in, ZRA is not the evil that we should be talking about. ZRA is actually trying to bring in coffers into that tax that fat bag we want to, thin bag we want to make fatter. There are these because of people talk too much about illicit movement of funds and grand corruption. But I'll tell you something, because people talk too much, they end up even getting away real things from the right things. Recently, I watched with dismay one of my older brothers, Vafube, when he was talking about saying, inenga votera fie Edgar Lungu, abone president wa political party abo, because taka so akainde wakaso. But I'll tell you something, and let us be very realistic, and I'm not shifting from the cause. I want to see how sometimes people can be talking about pettiness and the hate of individuals. If indeed you akainde wakaso, akasoka kwe ngakakupokenda mashapere ba lungu to others people. Look at the cadres how we are financed to hack you and I. But he gets the money to finance free education. He gets the money to finance bursaries in our students at universities. He gets the money to increase social cash transfer. He gets the money to recruit civil servants. Is that what you call that? But now I'll tell you something. And my response to people like my older brother Bafube is that birds of the same feathers flock together. So all they are admiring is that money which they get to give their children to put up those farms which they don't work for, to put up filling stations which they cannot account for, to buy 1,000 of cars when you have got your son in Kasama who is not going to school. These are issues that we should discuss. If indeed akasoka kwa akainde kakubula ingisha baticha bashaingire from 1990 baingire nchito, if akasoka kwa, it is to pay for your and my grandfather get his pension in his hands eshabombele. Hakainde cannot have akaso when he's paying government resources into the right hands where they are. So to be honest with you, I think maybe I should not even discuss because you can. I need to say this because it is important to say that. What is he saying? Is he objective or not objective?
Minister Chipoka Mulenga.
Yes, sir.
We have to end there, and I'll just ask you, is the private sector growing?
In our current form, sectors need to grow. And there's been a decline. Costa, when we talk about the growth of GDP, it affects everyone. Private sector, public sector. We are talking about the growth of our economy as opposed to 6% by 1.2%. That means there is a decline. In our current challenge, there has been a decline. So now, given the facilities we're putting in place, we will grow with everyone, and we have to grow together.
Thank you so much for coming to Costa this evening.
Much appreciated.
We've been discussing, obviously, a number of issues affecting the country economically, and obviously the cost of doing business and the high cost of living. My guest, the Minister of Trade, Commerce and Industry, Honorable Chipoka Mulenga, MP. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you can stream live again on YouTube. It's Diamond TV Zambia, Diamond TV Online, Diamond Media on Facebook. Thank you so much. Good night and God bless.
Costa was brought to you by FQM Trident Limited, a subsidiary of First Quantum Minerals Limited.